What's happening is uh, Russia is, of course, the dominant power on the battlefield. And every day, Ukraine is losing large numbers of uh, soldiers to death and serious injury, and its infrastructure is being destroyed. And Russia has said this war will end when the fundamental reasons for the war are addressed and when there is an agreement on the territorial changes that have resulted from this war. Okay, these are conditions for negotiation. These are conditions for ending the war in some kind of agreement.
You know, what Sachs just laid out is the crux of why this conflict has dragged on so long. Because the conditions for peace haven't really changed since day one. Russia's been remarkably consistent about what it wants, recognition of its security interests and finality on territorial issues. The tragedy is that both sides have lost hundreds of thousands of lives to end up right where they started, arguing over the same fundamentals. And the longer the West avoids addressing those root causes, the higher the eventual price everyone will pay, economically, politically, and morally.
The European countries and the American neocons who used to say that Russia will be defeated, it's losing, it's about to give in, now say ceasefire, ceasefire, because, of course, Ukraine is losing. The Russians say, well, not ceasefire, give us give us a solution to the underlying issues. And again, this is the reason why this meeting was canceled. And I don't know what the Russians said specifically, but what they're saying is the war will continue. Ukraine will continue to lose until we have a settlement that addresses the core issues that led to this conflict. That's been Russia's position, basically, not just since the invasion in February 2022, but going back to the real start of this war, which was a coup that overthrew Ukraine's government that America backed in February 2014, and which really started this war already 11 years ago. Russia said we need to get to the underlying reasons, especially NATO enlargement.
This point about NATO enlargement really can't be overstated. Every major flashpoint since the 1990s, from Yugoslavia to Georgia to Ukraine, circles back to that same expansionary drive. It's as if Washington never internalized the security anxieties that come with pushing military alliances right up to another great power's borders. History shows that ignoring those anxieties always ends badly.
And here we are 11 years later, and I think Trump is so out of it and so incompetent that they can't focus on real issues, but we're still talking about the same thing. Ceasefire? No. Solve the underlying problems. Ceasefire? No. Solve the underlying problems. And Russia says, okay, if there isn't a solution to the underlying problems, the war continues, and we will continue to take more territory. And I think the implication is eventually, Ukraine is going to lose everything because there's no discussion on substance. By the way, Zelensky to this hour, to this second, says, yes, we will be part of NATO. Yes, we will recover every inch or square millimeter of our territory. Yes, Russia will pay penalties. In other words, there's no discussion whatsoever on the Ukraine side because Ukraine is ruled by a military junta. That is Zelensky, who is far past his term of office, rules by martial law. The polling data show us month by month the overwhelming majority of Ukrainians want this war to end at the negotiating table, but not Zelensky for reasons that are somewhat unclear. One is that he's part of a corrupt regime which is raking off billions of dollars. Another is that the extreme right wing in Ukraine would kill him if he made peace. There are various theories, but whatever it is, it's not the Ukrainian people that want this. It's quite clear what they want.
What Sachs highlights here about public sentiment is sobering. Ordinary Ukrainians are exhausted. They've lost family, homes, futures. And yet the leadership remains trapped in a political and personal calculus of survival. We've seen this before in long wars, leaders fearing peace more than defeat because peace might expose corruption or cost them power. It's a heartbreaking pattern that repeats through history.
What's amazing, though, well, I mean, it's not amazing. It's just the incompetence, the sad, tragic incompetence of President Trump and his group. They can't even hold to a line day to day. Well, and the Europeans are shocking. You know, you have 3 European leaders, the UK Prime Minister Starmer, President of France Macron, and Chancellor of Germany Merz. Their populations in those 3 countries despise these 3 leaders. They each have approval ratings of about 20%, disapproval ratings of about 80%. And they're warmongers, and the public is sick of this war in Europe, in the United States, in Ukraine. And yet all they do is talk about continuing a losing war. And Trump, just to make absolutely 100% clear, this is now Trump's war. He kept saying this is Biden's war. Wouldn't have happened on his watch. Well, it's happening on his watch. He's not competent enough, it seems, and he doesn't have a team that's competent enough to end the war. The way to end the war is to address the real issues that cause this war, to say clearly, publicly, NATO enlargement is over. Ukraine will be neutral. These are basic points.
Neutrality isn't surrender. It's sometimes the only path to sovereignty. Austria after World War II is a good example. It regained independence precisely by promising neutrality. Ukraine could have followed a similar model years ago, but ideology and outside influence kept that option off the table. And now neutrality may come only after immense destruction.
President Putin in 2017, in an interview in France, made a statement which applies exactly to this circumstance. He said, presidents come into office with ideas, but then men in dark suits with briefcases, he meant the CIA and the rest of the military-industrial complex, come to the presidents and explain things as they are, and then you never hear of those ideas again. And what President Putin was saying is America is not governed by its presidents. America is governed by its military-industrial complex, the CIA, the National Security Agency, the Pentagon, the Armed Services Committees in Congress, the war profiteers who are everywhere. There's big money in this war, believe me. It's expensive, and it ends up in Silicon Valley. It ends up with the arms contractors. It ends up with the retired generals working on the boards of all of these companies. This is big business.
Sachs touches on something many prefer to ignore, that war has become an industry in itself. From weapons contractors to think tank analysts, too many livelihoods depend on perpetual conflict. Eisenhower warned about this 70 years ago, and here we are again, watching profits rise with every escalation. It's a grim reminder that peace rarely has a lobby as powerful as war does.
This war is America's biggest business. And they tell the president, no, you keep going. If you have a strong and effective president who knows what he's doing, and An example of that was Dwight D. Eisenhower himself, the supreme commander of Allied forces in World War II, who then became president between 1953 and January 1961. Yes, he can face them down and stop wars. But if you have a Donald Trump, he may come into office saying, I can end the war in 24 hours. And in the end, he ends up escalating the war so that we come ever closer to a nuclear war.
The fact that we're again discussing nuclear brinkmanship in 2025 is astonishing. Humanity has had 79 years to learn from Hiroshima, yet here we are replaying Cold War scenarios with far less capable leadership. It shows how fragile deterrence becomes when political theater replaces real diplomacy.
Sounds to me like we've taken another terrifying step closer to a full-fledged war by the account in the Wall Street Journal. I've not read it. It's just happened. I happen to be in Europe late at night, so I can't obviously verify the account or even know the details of it.
Right.
But what you described is what hardliners in the military-industrial complex press for. They want this war to continue. They want to test their weapons. They want to escalate. It's extraordinarily dangerous. Trump said he had a different idea. In fact, he probably did, but he is not competent enough, consistent enough to even understand what's happening by the evidence that we see. That's why you have one day an announcement of a meeting with President Putin in Budapest, and the next day it's called off. This kind of inconsistency is not safe for us. It's not safe for our world. The amateurism, the lack of a stable viewpoint, the fact that you have a president who says, yes, it's not the point of a ceasefire, it's the point to get to the root causes. He says that at some moment, and then he reverts, demanding an immediate ceasefire. He says at one point, sanctions are not the point. We need to negotiate. Then sanctions are put on. He says one day, no, it wouldn't be safe to use these missiles. And then the next day, he reverses. This instability is astounding. I think I could mention in passing, it's a reason why we don't even have a functioning open government right now, because processes like budgets that normally would be negotiated and settled don't get done in our country anymore. We're winging it, but we're not winging it. The executive office of the president is winging it. The military-industrial complex seems to be in authority right now.
When Sachs says the military-industrial complex seems to be in authority, he's not exaggerating. The revolving door between government, media, and defense boards has erased accountability. The people selling the weapons also shape the narratives that justify their use. That's why policy feels so erratic, because profit, not principle, has become the compass.
It's very, very disturbing and very dangerous, and taking us closer and closer to disaster.
Sachs is right. The danger today isn't just the war itself, but the absence of steady hands capable of managing it. Institutions that once acted as brakes have become engines of escalation. When even budgets can't be passed, how can strategy be coherent? We're witnessing the unraveling of governance in real time, and it's a warning to every democracy. If you outsource statecraft to profit and partisanship, chaos fills the vacuum. That's the lesson we can't afford to ignore.